Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
He walked over to the table where she was sitting, waiting. She was dressed stunningly. Even after recently giving birth, she looked as beautiful and sensual as she always did. He hadn't seen her for several months, and out of the blue, she called him, asking to meet and discuss everything, to try to settle things and get back together. So there he sat, face to face with the woman he had once loved like no other, until she broke his heart. After placing our drink orders and exchanging a few strained greetings, he began by saying, "You said you want to talk, so talk." Stung by his callousness, his harshness, the pretty red-haired woman coldly replied, "Have you stopped being angry yet?" Studiously ignoring the woman's question, he asked his own, "Why do you want to get back together?" Caught off guard by his unexpected question, she couldn't help but frown slightly in response, thinking and trying to understand the rationale. He mistook her expression for one of irritation and disapproval. His hidden anger made itself known. "Fine, I'm leaving." He was about to get up. "Wait, stop. Why are you leaving?" "You just arrived," she said nervously, her voice trembling a little. "Answer my question and I'll think about staying longer," the man snapped. She looked into his eyes. She could always tell his mood by his brown eyes. Only now, all she saw was intense anger and something else she didn't know. Whatever it was, she felt it was not in her favor. I miss you. I want to have what we had before. I love you. I need you," she said pleadingly. Somewhat reassured by her answer, the man settled more comfortably in the chair. "You didn't need me when you were with him. How can you say you love me when you lied to me and deceived me the whole time we were together? You were with him, had sex with him, loved him. What kind of crap is this?" said the man in a voice full of contempt. Hanging her head in shame, she said, "I know. I'm really sorry. I don't know what I thought. I guess I didn't think." Raising her head to look at him, her eyes filled with tears, she added, "Please, I'm really sorry. I won't do this anymore, never. Just take me back." Shaking his head in disgust at her answer, the man looked at the crying woman. Once upon a time, his heart would have melted at her tears, but now all he felt was cold anger with no compassion in it. "I thought you were different. I thought you were serious about us. I thought that what I felt and said mattered to you. I was wrong. You're just another cheating." "No, please, do not say that. I really love you, only you, no one else, please. I made a mistake. I can't go back. I would like to, but I can't," she cried in despair. He felt anger boil within him at her words. He tried to calm down. After a few seconds of her quiet tears, he managed to pull himself together. "When we first met, I thought I had found the perfect woman in every way. You were the woman I had been looking for all my life. I've been wallowing in the filthiness of my job for too long, and you've made me feel like there really is good in the world. After that, every day I flew high. Then I found out about him, but you convinced me that it was all over. Against my better judgment, I believed you. Things went differently after that, but somehow we managed to stay together and moved on. I continued to have my suspicions, however, I agreed with what you said. But in fact, this is not the end. Yet you lied to me. You planned and executed a very well thought out deception." The woman moaned as if in pain when he spoke. She wanted to deny everything, pretend it never happened. However, the truth was confirmed by facts. You gave birth to his child. It's not a mistake or even an accident. You deliberately got him pregnant. It takes planning to get off the pill and get pregnant. I doubt it happened in one go. I guess you were with him several times until you were sure you were pregnant. So explain to me what exactly was the mistake I did not want," she cried. "He made me do it." "Oh, so he forced you first, making sure you weren't taking the pills. Maybe he waited to force you until you started ovulating a few weeks or maybe a couple of months," the man said sarcastically. "Is this what you want to tell me?" "Yes, no, I mean, he was strong. He wouldn't take no for an answer. He constantly wanted to have sex, then he wanted a child. Somehow he found my birth control pills and threw them down the toilet. This was a new prescription. This was a 90-day recipe. I tried." "I don't buy it," he said, interrupting. "What do you mean this is true?" "I am not lying." "Listen to yourself, nothing but excuses, plus they suck. How many times have you refused me when I wanted to make love to you? I can say that this happened more than once, and if I remember correctly, you even went so far as to convince me that no means no. How often did this happen? Let me think, more often than we had sex. So why not use the same methods with him? Tell me." She looked around, not really seeing anything, trying to collect her thoughts. His questions were sharp. Why did she allow herself to be forced? Why didn't she tell him no? "I don't know. I think, no, this is not an answer, the man said louder than he intended, noticing that several restaurant patrons turned their heads towards the table at which they were sitting. More calmly, he continued, why didn't you tell him no? What power does he have over you that you mindlessly do what he says? I'm really sorry. I don't know. Maybe it's because he commands, she explained carefully, almost with fear. Oh, but not me? Am I not the dominant type? This is all, the man hissed in rage. No, that's not the point. You are loving, you don't take, you give. You are kind, caring, gentle. You listen to me and do not force yourself on me. That's why I love you so much. It brought me a lot of good things. When you were in his bed and not in mine, you could leave him at any time. Did he make physical threats? No. Did he hold you against your will? No. In fact, you deliberately stayed with him, isn't that right? Please, why are you treating me like a criminal? You act as if we are in court and you are the prosecutor. Please stop. Can't you see that it hurts me too? The man's eyes widened and his nostrils flared as his anger threatened to burst out. He calmed down noticeably, forcing himself to pull himself together. I'm a criminal lawyer, or have you forgotten it? Even though you didn't break any laws by sleeping with him and having his child, you broke your vow to me. How should I feel? You said you love me, you said you want us to have a family. Why did you want to have my children, to spend your whole life with me? And what a fool I am. I believed your nonsense. So tell me, how should I react to your indiscretion? He said with a cruel laugh, and how did I cause you any pain because I won't take the cheating back? At his words, her eyes filled with such a flood of tears that she could no longer see him, and her shoulders shook from the sudden pain. He was right, she couldn't deny the truth of his words. She told him this, and she continued, can't you give me another chance? I'll never see him again. I promise I will only be yours. Please, I'm begging you. I love you. I didn't realize how strong my feelings were until you stopped calling me and we stopped seeing each other. I have missed you so much these past months that my heart constantly hurts. Please, honey, now I know that you are the only man for me. You will always be like this. Do you want another chance? The man asked thoughtfully, his mouth cruelly twisted. Fine, fine. Here's your chance. Get rid of the child. Rewrite it to him. Tell him to his face that you hate that he made you give birth. Tell him that you hate everything about him, including his child. And never come into contact with him or his child, he said with sharp vehemence. Do this and maybe we'll have a chance. We will leave the state, we'll start all over again. I am a very good lawyer, I can easily get a job in some decent firm and be at the top in no time. His words shocked her, even horrified her. Abandon your son, hate your own child, this thought made her feel sick and a new pain settled in her heart. She couldn't do it, she couldn't give up her child. Suddenly she realized it, and with this realization came even deeper despair. He was going to leave her now, she knows it, leave her forever. She shook her head in disbelief. How did it come to this? She knew she screwed up, but she really thought he would forgive her. She began to sob openly and loudly. Stop that. You're making a scene. Stop crying or I'll leave right now, the man ordered. I'm sorry, please. I'll stop, she sobbed. Well, stop it or I can't. I just cannot. He is my son, no matter who his father is. He is my child. Please don't ask me for this. Please, I'll do anything else. I will be your slave. I'll give you something else, another child, your son, but not this. Please. Shaking his head, the man stood up. No, it's either this or nothing. You brought this on yourself, you lied to me. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too, the man said calmly, almost emotionlessly. I'm not going to raise someone else's child, and obviously I won't have to do that. Goodbye. Wait, please, can we? She began. We have nothing to wait for, and we can't do a damn thing. This is completely clear to me. You have made your choice. We're done. Come back to him. Go back to your husband, he said with bitter resignation, slowly moving away from the woman and leaving through the restaurant door. Thank you for listening to this story. Now here is another exciting story for you to read. Molly watched from the front door of the mansion as her husband Philip got into his Jaguar XJ. She waved and blew him a kiss. Philip smiled and waved back before pulling out of the driveway and heading to the airport for his flight to New York. Molly leaned contentedly against the door frame and enjoyed the South Florida morning. It was still cool, but soon the heat would begin to increase. Their small front yard was ablaze with lantana, and two gorgeous bougainvilleas framed the front door and small porch. The air was filled with their floral scent, and butterflies flew from flower to flower. Molly was a red-haired 30-year-old beauty with an outgoing personality and a fiery independent streak. She was an editor at a publishing house that worked primarily with authors of romance novels and other fiction aimed at female tastes. With the advent of modern electronics, it became profitable to work from home, so she converted the second bedroom of their townhouse into a very functional office. Philip and Molly had been married for 7 years. Philip was 19 years older than Molly. Her family and friends were stunned by the age difference when they married, but as Molly explained to her younger sister and select friends, the advantage of older men was that they were patient, consummate lovers who knew how to please a woman, unlike some of the young bulls her age she had slept with. After all, everyone knows that you drink aged wine and not new because old tastes much better and richer. It didn't hurt that Philip was rich, very rich. Philip was from North America and, of course, was educated at Harvard. He increased the family fortune through his highly successful international electronics company. Molly was no fortune hunter, but still, a girl should be aware of any silver linings that potential suitors might bring to the altar. Molly came to South Florida from poor coal country in Kentucky in search of education and opportunities that were not available at home. She found both. Philip saw a gorgeous young woman waiting tables at a nightclub while she was finishing her graduate degree in English at a local university. Inexplicably, he was struck down by Cupid's arrow and they were soon married. So, in the end, Molly was a happily married young woman who was well coiffed and pampered, pursuing a career she enjoyed. During late winter and spring, the couple lived in their Florida townhouse. During the height of summer and fall until New Year's, they lived in their main and much larger home near the Highlands in the mountains of North Carolina. It was a real mansion with several year-round servants and all the trappings of truly rich people. The South Florida townhouse was their personal retreat for just the two of them. Philip's business often required 1 or 2 trips per month, usually lasting 3 to 5 days, sometimes more. This was not a burden for Molly as she had a job, several hobbies, and was an avid fitness enthusiast. In addition, the townhouse was only 2 blocks from the beach and a half-mile away was also a beachfront strip of upscale shopping, restaurants, bars, and nightclubs with various entertainment options. She and Philip visited there often, and when he was away, she also visited them without hesitation. After all, she was a grown, modern woman. Molly watched her husband disappear on the way to the airport. He was a good man and a wonderful husband. She, in turn, was a devoted and faithful wife. Well, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. She was truly very devoted to Philip and they made a great couple. But she was also a vibrant young and very sexy woman with an older husband of a different generation. This combination sometimes leads to unpleasant complications. 3 or 4 years ago, Molly began to succumb to the siren song of carnal temptation. In Philip's absence, she may have lost her way once or twice over the years. No, that's not entirely correct either. Perhaps there was more to it than that. Let's just say she was a friendly, easygoing woman with a healthy carnal appetite and leave it at that. In times past, the husband had complete ownership of his wife and her precious physical assets. In today's world, a husband's rights to his wife's physical property are more like a lease agreement than a sales agreement. Therefore, when the tenant, the husband in this case, is unable to use the said premises, it makes sense for the landlord, the wife in this case, to sublet her assets to another man in the absence of the main tenant. In this case, one can view Molly's extramarital activities as those of a prudent businesswoman maximizing the return and use of her valuable carnal assets, which are in significant demand on the open market. After all, Molly was just a spirited young woman fooling around occasionally for fun and excitement, but with no serious intentions. Philip was a cosmopolitan, highly educated socialite with brilliant business abilities. He was a convinced realist and had no illusions. He knew that men would propose to his sexy young wife as soon as his back was turned, and his young wife would be strongly seduced by young stallions of her age. How could it be otherwise? This is an ancient tale often told in literature and played out in life. Philip believed that he had a Ferrari as a wife. Such a treasure had no value locked in the garage. Sometimes a Ferrari has to be allowed to run wild on the open road if one wants to enjoy driving such a magnificent piece of physical art. One must also accept that there may be speeding tickets along the way. Philip was tolerant of his young wife's potential sexual escapades. They didn't have an explicit agreement, but he was thoughtful in his actions and she was reserved. Philip kept his wife informed of his schedule and tried not to show up at home unexpectedly. Most importantly, he did not poke his nose into other people's affairs. Molly, for the most part, limited her flirtations to times when he was traveling. Such dates also tended to be limited to their time in South Florida. There were servants and too many friends and relatives back in North Carolina to be promiscuous without causing a public scandal. But here in South Florida, they were far from their usual social environment, and the area was overrun with vacationers and snowbirds escaping the winter weather. In this anonymous mass, prey was plentiful and easy for such a sexy young creature like Molly. Molly looked outside towards the beach. Andre walked briskly just in time. He was a slender, dark-haired, cheerful man about her age. She waved enthusiastically and smiled happily. Andre waved back. Last year, Andre asked Molly to dance at a nightclub, and one thing quickly led to another. He was a Parisian and apparently wealthy, as he took a month off every spring to vacation in South Florida. He had a large beach house a few blocks from Molly's townhouse, and they met there periodically when Philip was out of town. But today, Andre came to her wanting to renew their stormy acquaintance. Last year, he had only arrived yesterday, and when he called shortly after arriving, he was glad that her husband was leaving that morning. A shiver of excitement ran through Molly's body. Well, you know what they say about French lovers. She could vouch that their reputation was well-deserved. Molly fell for the exotic dark charm of a foreign lover like in the romance novels she edited. His sexy accented English just turned her into mush. Sex with her husband was wonderful. Sex with Andre was a spicy, forbidden lust of the unknown and dangerous. She loved both types of sex. These were simply different spheres of sexual experience that did not intersect. As Andre stepped onto the porch, Molly reached out, pulled him inside, and closed the door. She hugged him and smothered him with a deep, passionate kiss, pushing her tongue into his mouth. Andre responded to her passion. Molly broke the kiss, turned, and breathless with anticipation, dragged Andre up the stairs to the family bedroom. When they entered the bedroom, Molly began to take off his clothes, and he responded in kind. The naked couple quickly walked towards the bed, an antique iron bed high enough that Molly had to take a short leap to sit on the edge. Andre pushed her onto her back and knelt by the bed. Andre began deliciously kissing Molly's prized assets as her legs dangled from his shoulders, squeezing, straining, and twitching erratically in spasms of pleasure. She ran her fingers through Andre's dark hair and hugged him. Then footsteps were heard on the stairs and a fateful call, "Darling." Because her attention was diverted by Andre's ministrations between her thighs, Molly didn't hear her husband's car pull up, the automatic lock on the car door jingle, and the front door open. The most terrible moment of the adulterous encounter had arrived. The unsuspecting husband suddenly appears on the scene. Andre's head shot up between Molly's legs, eyes wide with alarm. From Molly's point of view looking down on him, Andre looked like a frightened groundhog jumping out of his hole to look at some unexpected danger. The approaching catastrophe of her husband's imminent arrival at the amorous spectacle precluded any delay. Otherwise, Molly would have shuddered with laughter at the sight of Andre between her thighs looking around in horror. Andre hissed, "Your husband," simultaneously with Molly's hiss, "My husband, honey." The airline sent a message that my flight was canceled. I'll take a later flight. The couple jumped out of bed as they heard Philip's slow footsteps walking up the stairs. It was a dull blow of fate approaching step by step. Andre grabbed Molly's hand and whispered hysterically, "Oh my God, what should we do?" Andre was scared, and Molly thought about the potential violent reaction of the deceived husband upon discovering an intruder in his wife's bed. This reaction is usually directed at the intruder. Philip's muscular and athletic physique was part of Molly's initial attraction to him. At one time, Philip was even a moderately successful heavyweight in the Harvard Boxing Club. Andre, on the other hand, was more of an intellectual type inclined towards poetry and art rather than sports. If a conflict arose, there could hardly be any doubt about the result. Despite their different ages, there was little choice but to accept and surrender to Philip's mercy or hide Andre. Molly feverishly assessed the worsening situation like a general on the battlefield holding back a catastrophic defeat. Philip was too close for Andre to sneak into her office in the second bedroom. Both the closet and the bathroom would provide initial cover, but there was no cover inside if Philip happened to look in there. However, the antique bed had at least a 30-inch gap and the blanket hung almost to the floor. Molly pushed Andre towards the bed and hissed insistently, "Get in deep and lie still no matter what happens." Andre did not hesitate. He threw himself on the floor with a dull thud as his head hit the lower iron railing. Andre chuckled, stopped, and grabbed his forehead. Molly put her foot on Andre's bare bottom, pushing him forward, and desperately whispered, "For God's sake, hurry up." Andre redoubled his efforts, crawling under the bed. The last thing Molly saw was his shuffling feet desperately pushing his bare buttocks and legs under the bed. My God, this is turning into a vaudeville farce or one of Shakespeare's twisted comedies, she thought. Molly smoothed out the blanket where they had crumpled the surface a minute before jumping off the bed. She grabbed their discarded clothes and shoes, which lay in a heap on the bedroom floor. Molly rushed into the bathroom and shoved everything into the dirty clothes basket, singing, "I'm in the bathroom, dear, I'm drawing a bath." With these words, Molly turned on the bathtub faucet. She was a versatile girl and periodically enjoyed sensual relaxation by reading trashy novels. That was at least a plausible explanation for her nakedness. Molly hurried back and searched the bedroom for any incriminating evidence that might alert her husband to the intruder's presence. A shoe, one of Andre's, fell out of her collection of discarded clothes. Molly was a great soccer player in high school and kicked her shoe under the bed in desperation. She may have put too much oomph into the blow, and a startled grunt came from under the bed. Approaching the bedroom door seemingly calmly, Molly faked a smile and asked, "What did you say happened with your flight? Is something wrong, dear?" Philip walked through the bedroom door, his large muscular figure dressed in a sharp, Bryany suit exuding an air of competence and masculinity. "Oh yes, this is the man I married, and for a reason," Molly reminded herself. "Oh no, it's okay. The airline texted me halfway to the airport that my flight was canceled and I was rebooked on a later flight. I sent you." Philip froze, staring at the unexpected vision of his beautiful naked wife looking at him with her brilliant brown eyes sparkling with amusement. Perhaps that spark was fear or excitement rather than amusement, or perhaps it was a combination of all three. "I didn't expect such a nice welcome home," Philip continued. "As I said, I sent you a message saying I was coming home and suggested we have a cup of coffee with one of those beautiful blueberry muffins which you prepared this morning." Among her many talents, Molly was also an accomplished cook, and she enjoyed preparing food and culinary delights for Philip. Molly struck a saucy pose, sticking her hip out and brazenly raising her hand on her hip. "Oh, I left my phone downstairs and didn't see the message. Well, I was going to take a good soak before I started my editing job," she continued to tease. "I suppose I can be persuaded to put it off for coffee and muffins with my husband." Molly turned and retreated into the bathroom, turning off the tap. She shouted over her shoulder, "And how much time do you have, dear?" As Molly reached for the robe hanging on the bathroom door, two muscular arms wrapped around her and effortlessly lifted her off the ground. Philip carried his struggling and laughing wife to the bed, where he laid her face down on the blanket. He held her there with one hand, removing her clothes while she playfully tried to run away. After all, she had no desire to actually shy away from what was about to happen. Philip said with a laugh, "Oh, you little minx, long enough to have a quickie with his wife and then have coffee and muffins with her." Panicked, Andre lay motionless face down under the bed. His forehead was throbbing where he'd hit his head on the headboard, and his face was burning where Molly had kicked him with her boot. He forced himself to lie still like a corpse. He had seen Philip and Molly several times last year, and he had no desire to come face to face with the big man whose wife he had so thoroughly fooled last year and had just tried to repeat. Andre suspected that such a confrontation would not end well for him. He could hear everything that was said between the wife and husband and observe what was happening. Well, he could watch what was happening on the floor. He heard Molly land on the bed above him and saw her husband's clothes cascade to the floor and be tossed aside. Apparently, Philip spread Molly's legs, and Andre had Molly's engine firing on all cylinders before her husband arrived. Now she was warmed up and hot. The bed began to heave rhythmically, accompanied by Molly's smooth, happy sighs that Andre knew so well from last year. As the pace quickened, Andre began to fear that the 200-year-old cast iron bed frame would undergo a brittle stress fracture and leave him trapped under the springs, the mattress, and the vigorously copulating bodies. The bed shook, creaked, and groaned as if it was having a nervous breakdown. The steady slapping of flesh on flesh was accompanied by Molly's frantic cries, "Oh yes, baby, oh yes." Finally, Philip let out a bullish roar, rising to his tiptoes, and Molly's legs disappeared from Andre's sight. Molly's joyful cries of "Oh, oh, oh, oh God" announced that everyone involved was enjoying successful copulation. The gasping couple sat on the edge of the bed, catching their breath. Molly exhaled, "Oh God, I'm so glad the plane was canceled." Andre, relieved that the bed frame had withstood the dynamic load of the couple's love fest, watched his ankles make their way to the bathroom. Molly pushed Philip towards the shower and ordered, "Take a quick shower, get dressed, and come back. I'll make fresh coffee and heat up the muffins." Molly grabbed her robe from the back of the bathroom door and put it on. She blew a kiss to her husband while he was taking a shower and then returned to the bedroom. Molly tiptoed over to the bed and knelt down to look under it. She covered her mouth to suppress a giggle. Naked Andre lay motionless right under the place where her husband had just turned off the light. The absurd irony of the situation tickled Molly's funny side. A nasty yellow-blue welt from the bed frame formed on Andre's forehead, and his right eye began to turn black from the blow from the boot. "Oh, you poor thing," Molly exclaimed quietly. She put her finger to her lips and whispered, "Shh, do not move, the floor squeaks, he will hear you. I'll come for you when everything is clear." Andre nodded, indicating that he understood. Molly stood up, collected Philip's clothes from the floor, and took them to the bathroom. Then she went downstairs. A few minutes later, Philip got out of the shower, got dressed, and also went downstairs. Andre remained as motionless as a church mouse. He had not the slightest desire to meet Philip in his native lair. As he became increasingly tense, lying motionless in his cramped sanctuary, Andre could hear Molly's sweet melodious voice and the richer tones of Philip's voice interspersed with light laughter as the couple enjoyed coffee and muffins. A congenial couple sat directly under the place where the wife's upset and beaten lover was hiding. Finally, Molly looked at her watch and exclaimed, "Honey, that was great, but if you're going to catch the plane, you need to get going." Philip winced. "You're right, it really was great, but I have to go." The couple kissed warmly at the door, and Molly watched her delightful husband drive away for the second time that morning. As Molly turned to walk up the stairs, her phone on the table by the door buzzed with an incoming message. There were two messages from Philip, an old one about a cancelled flight and his return home, and a new one that had just arrived. "Thank you for a wonderful morning. Don't have too much fun without me today," and a winking emoticon. Molly sat down on the steps with a mysterious smile, looking thoughtfully at the message. Andre still acted like a good boy and hid under the bed, waiting for her to free him. He could have waited a little longer. She needed to think about it. Does Philip somehow know about Andre? The mention of today's fun and the winking face made her think. But it can also be completely innocent. It was unclear how Philip could have guessed Andre's presence. However, she also knew that Philip was a spice. He would put Sherlock Holmes to shame. Did he put his wife on top of her lover on purpose, just for fun or out of spite, or was it just a coincidence? Who knows what conclusions Philip, with his brilliant mind, might draw about today. Molly often wondered if her husband suspected or guessed about her occasional foray beyond marital boundaries. She, of course, appreciated his obvious tolerance and leniency towards her sins and tried to keep everything a secret so as not to embarrass her husband. Molly sat on the stairs for several minutes, deep in thought. Philip was truly one of those one-in-a-million husbands. He was much older, and there were pros and cons to having such a husband. In Philip's case, the pros definitely outweighed the cons. She reminded herself grimly that those women with husbands around the same age would have much more time to enjoy with their husbands than she had with Philip. Perhaps it's time to grow up and take your marriage more seriously. Molly quickly typed a message to her husband. It was written, "Dear, plans have changed. First, I'll take out the trash, then I'll pack my things and catch an afternoon flight to New York. Tell the Four Seasons front desk that your wife will be joining you at this time." She closed the message with the same winking emoticon he sent her. After that, Philip alone drove a hot and lively ferry, and there were no fines for speeding. Dear viewers, thank you for staying with us and supporting our channel. See you again.